All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We are so appreciative of you being with us today. We're very excited about this webinar that we have to share with you. Of course, if you are not with us live and you're watching the recording, this was recorded on St. Patrick's Day. So we are appropriately dressed in our green and shamrocks. So welcome to the webinar, A Year Later, Pandemic Wisdom to Carry Forward, with our behavior support specialist from the North, Erin Day, and our special guest, Erin Anderson. We'll talk more about her in just a few slides. Erin Day, if you'd like to move the slides forward. Of course, we have to share with you that we are a collaboration between the West Virginia Autism Training Center and the West Virginia Department of Education's Office of Education. And we're coming to you from the West Virginia Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center. The TA Center houses 3 projects for this State Department of Education. We house the West Virginia Early Childhood PBIS project, the West Virginia PBIS School-Wide Project, and Mental Health First Aid. This is a new slide for you. We wanted to make sure that you had a chance to check out our website at wvpbis.org. Also go and follow us on Facebook at WVPBIS to get updates about what trainings and webinars and resources that we have coming your way. We have a couple other QR codes here. We have moved our TFI to an online format. So if you are an implementing PBIS school or you have any relations to an implementing PBIS school, the end of your data is going to be, we're going to want those TFI scores by April 30th. We're going to be sending out information about that at the beginning of April, and you can use this QR code. Go enter your data.
Zoom conference until 5 o'clock.
Hold on just a minute. There they are.
I'm just going to sit back and relax and listen to that.
Okay. And then the other QR code down here is we're trying to gather data for implementation stories. So if you have had successes or hurdles that you have went through with your PBIS team, or from any trainings that you have went through with the TA Center, we would love to hear your stories. We're trying to get some different sorts of data for our end of year report that we're going to be putting together. All right, Erin. Of course, this is the regional map of the TA department's behavior support specialist. I am Alicia Zeman. I'm the PBIS coordinator for school-wide. If you'll see here, we have the 4 regions spread out in front of you. So Erin Day is in the northern region. Terrell Jones is in the southern region for school-wide. Jen Fletcher is in the mountain region, and Tiffany Hendershot is in the eastern panhandle. But I will add, Tiffany is out this year on military duty. She's actually being deployed. She's in Texas right now. So if you are in the Eastern Panhandle and you need support from the TA Center, please go ahead and reach out to me. And then you'll see the triangles that are represented on the map. The triangles that are blue towards the north in the Eastern Panhandle represent our early childhood behavior support specialist, Sarah Smouse. And the triangles that are red towards the bottom of the state and in the mountain region are our early childhood behavior support specialist, Jess George. So if you need us, feel free to contact us. You can scan that QR code that will take you to a request for assistance, and somebody will be in touch with you for how we can help you. Just a little bit about us. We are the hub for the PBIS programs. Projects in the state of West Virginia, but we also do several other trainings as well. We do trainings on trauma and trauma-informed classrooms, challenging behaviors and classroom procedures, functions of behavior and data analysis, family engagement, self-care for educators, and really, if you have a need that is centered around behavior and mental health, you can reach out to us and we will do the best we can to help you meet your needs. All right, I'm going to turn this over to our behavior support specialist, Erin Day, and she's going to walk you through today's objectives, and they're going to get this awesome webinar started. So have a great day, guys.
All right, thank you, Alicia, so much for doing that. So for those of you who are here live today, or if you're listening to this recording, thank you for joining us, and I'm excited to have you here. This is a webinar I've been really excited about. So I hope that you get something valuable out of it today. So a few objectives. First, I'm going to start with setting the stage and explaining kind of the idea behind this webinar and why it was created. I will introduce you to our guest, and then each of us are going to talk about some silver linings that we have found over the past year. And I'm going to talk about that from our perspective here at the TA Center. And then Erin is going to talk about that from her perspective in the classroom. So, just a little bit about why this webinar was created. We know that this past year, since last March, has been filled with a lot of things, a lot of negative feelings surrounding the last year of uncertainty, doubt, and stress, unprecedented challenges for teachers, and anxiety and worry. As you can see by the little meme there, we know that teaching is stressful any year, but this year you've had these added layers that are unfamiliar to you. I was actually in the classroom last year and in March when we went virtual. So I empathize with what you've been through over the past year. I understand where you are coming from. And it was important to me having that experience last year and then the experiences I've gotten to have with the schools I've worked with through my new position to really highlight what educators have been through since last March. So while there's been a lot of negativity, there's also been some silver linings that we have found. We know that that year has been filled with the things I mentioned, but it's also been filled with a lot of positive things, with teachers making a real difference in the lives of their students, with schools rising to this new challenge, and with unexpected outcomes for our students. So, I want to introduce to you our guest today. I was driving one day, and on the radio, they had a clip about the teacher of the year. And I was listening, and I listened to Erin talk about someone had mentioned that they would hate to be named the teacher of the year during a pandemic, and that she actually felt that it was the perfect time to highlight the work that teachers are doing. And the things she was saying just really resonated with me, and I thought really rang true to the message I wanted to share with all of you today. That while we know a lot has happened in the last year, and a lot of that has been very trying on you, that there are still good things happening in education and good things that we can find from our experience to carry forward with us into the years to come. So I have Erin Anderson from Upshur County, who is the 2021 West Virginia Teacher of the Year, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or whether you're tuning into the recording. Erin and Alicia, it has been so great to get to know you and meet you and chat with you. And I'm so glad that you've put this together. This is something that's been on my heart, and it just basically, Erin, the email just kind of, fell in my lap, and this is just, it's perfect timing. Like you said, about staying, when I said this was the perfect year, I just had the conversation again today with my superintendent. And I said, I kind of did this shift from having to be positive because I'm in the spotlight immediately to wanting to be positive because it felt so much better. So let me back up and tell you some of my credentials. So this is my 21st year teaching. I started my career teaching Title I. I taught Title I for about 6 years. So mostly K-3, but then I landed in a fourth grade Title I position, which is sometimes unheard of. And stayed there for about 5 years and then moved to the middle school. So I taught sixth grade reading at the middle school. Really unique group of learners at the middle school. I don't know if there are any middle school teachers on the call today, but just it takes a really unique person, really special person to deal with and teach middle schoolers, just a unique age group. From the middle school, my dream job came about, which was fifth grade back at my elementary school where I grew up. And so I am currently teaching fifth grade at Tennerton Elementary School in Buchanan in my former fifth grade classroom. So full circle moment for me. My daughter is in third grade. She's in my former third grade classroom. So all things teacher. My platform is the teacher identity and what makes us us. So it came about my platform actually came about by accident. I was on a call with state superintendent before with the other 4 finalists for the teacher of the year. And we were on a panel discussion, and he mentioned, he was asking the same question. I thought, when it gets to me, I'm not going to answer that. I mean, I agree with what everybody said, but I've got to come up with something new and fresh. And everybody had been talking about the students and, just the social, emotional piece. And when it got to me, I just said, this is our identity too. This is our identity as teachers. We want our kids in front of us. And so anyway, that's where it started, kind of by accident, but it has grown into, like I said, to my platform, and something that I'm really passionate about, and just owning that teacher identity, what makes us us. I'm also a mom, like I mentioned. I also have a stepdaughter who's in the Eastern Panhandle, and one here in Buchanan with me. I'm a wife. My husband and I dated in high school. We broke up for about 13 years, and it took me that long to get over that. He broke up with me before the homecoming dance, and it took me a long time to get over that. And so anyway, we've been together for about 15 or 16 years now, I think. He works for the West Virginia State Police. My mom and I are best friends. So I always like to say I'm also a daughter, because my mom is my biggest cheerleader. When I was named Teacher of the Year, if you've watched any of that footage, you'll hear me say my mom said it's about time, because she knows the hard work that teachers put in. I love the beach. I love to run. I'm going to go ahead and plug Mr. Grant's Wellness Wednesdays. If you have a chance and you need a good workout, check out Wellness Wednesdays with Mr. Grant. In the classroom, the reason that I was with him was because I started a program last year with my kiddos, Move It Monday. And so he thought, because of my love for fitness and running and the active lifestyle for kids, that I would be a good fit for that. So that's me in a nutshell. Very big nutshell.
All right. Thank you, Erin. And I can tell you guys, you're very lucky to get to listen to her talk today. I've had several conversations with her, and I smile through all of them, and just really enjoy everything she has to share. So I'm really excited for you guys to get her perspective today. So we're going to dig into these silver linings that we found. And our list could go on and on, but we've wrapped these up into 5 different topics. So what's going to happen here is I will share our perspective from the TA Center and the experiences that we have had working with schools across the state. And then I will give Erin a chance to share her perspective on these from her experiences, both in the classroom where she's working and as the Teacher of the Year, and the connections she has made from that. So the first one we're going to talk about is self-care. And I feel like this is something that's kind of gotten a bad rep over the last year. We've all seen the memes on Facebook or Twitter or something else that, they're pushing self-care on teachers, but there isn't time for that. But our perspective on that is quite different. We know how busy teachers are, and we know everything you have on your plate. So when we talk about self-care, we're not necessarily talking about this extra event or layer or taking focus off of what's really important to you, but we're really talking about what comes down to how you take care of yourself and the things that you do for yourself. Things like controlling the controllables. And that's really been important this year. There's been so much completely out of your control as a teacher. So being able to focus in on controlling the things that you can, and giving yourself that peace and that experience, to focus on what's important within your classrooms. And then really talking about rational optimism and reframing, and that idea of understanding that things are fixable. And with the right mindset, we can overcome the challenges that are before us. Opening up your support network and really making connections with your staff members. I know that's something we've really seen this year, that as teachers, I know collaboration is something that comes naturally. But this year, those support networks have gotten stronger because they've needed to. And I think that's a silver lining from what you've experienced this year. And really just those daily habits or your structures and routines, whether those are routines in your classroom or routines for yourself in your personal life. But what do you do for yourself to kind of set the tone for the rest of your day? And what that all really boils down to for me is doing those things that fill your cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. So take care of yourself first. And that really just means allowing yourself to feel ready to take on the day. So, what are you doing for yourself first, to make sure that you are in your concrete shoes and that you are ready to tackle the challenges around you, to create positive outcomes for your students? And I know Erin has a lot to go with this. She and I have talked about this in depth. So I'm going to allow her to share her perspective and experiences on this.
I guess this would be my unofficial platform, this filling, and that's where I guess maybe it's in our name, Aaron. We just we're kind of connected somehow because we've been talking about self-care, and I said to somebody, I said, stop. Teacher self-care. You can't talk. Teacher self-care is not the same as anybody else self-care, because for us, teachers, we like to be prepared for whatever. We want to be overplanned, overprepared. So our self-care is grading on the weekends and planning, in the early morning or in the evening, whatever works for you, however you do it. And marking things off of a to-do list for me is self-care, because then I know I'm going to be ready. So anyway, self-care was kind of floating around. And a friend of mine, we share on the Bible app, we share a devotion. And the message one particular day was about filling your cup, like Aaron said. And I just started thinking about filling. And the devotion said something about whatever you're filling yourself with, whatever you're spending time doing, when life knocks into you for whatever reason, whatever it is, whatever life knocks into you, what's going to spill out is whatever you've been pouring in. And so if you're filling yourself with, the nastiness, the hate, all the, horrible things that are the negativity online and on Facebook or wherever it is, wherever you can find it, just about anywhere. If that's what you're choosing to fill yourself with, you might end up being a little angry when life knocks into you. And so I was thinking about that, and I thought, wow, this is really something. So I've gone from, like I mentioned previously, I've gone from having to stay positive because all eyes are on me. What's the teacher you're going to do now? What's she going to say? How's she going to react to this? To now filling. And I thought, wow, this is great. I'm just going to fill myself with all these great things, and life's going to knock into me, and it's going to be, rainbows and sunshine spilling out. That's not what I'm saying. But it does kind of work that way. Not 100% of the time. So I would just ask you to think about, what are you filling yourself with? So, and you're not running away from anything when you do this. I mean, the problems are still going to be there. It's just how you're going to be able to deal with them. And so I think about, for myself personally, family time, reading, whether it's devotions or, something for school, a book, exercise. I love to run and exercise, spending time with friends. I'm sure you all have a list in mind of things that you could fill yourself with. I think about our kids, and Aaron, we haven't talked about this. I didn't mention I was going to say this, but I think about the kids, what they're filling with. So I have a little guy that is video game crazy, and what's spilling out of him and what he kind of cares about is all the characters and the action and whatever's happening in this video game. And it's not real. It's, not totally fantasy. It's not reality. So then I think about the other kids in my class who are active, have an active extracurricular life, or active parents. Maybe they are a member of the youth group at church, and how they're reacting to situations, how they're reacting, where their emotions are these days. And so I knew I was on the right track with the filling when my husband said, I heard your interview. He's like, I think you're onto something with this filling. And he's a hard sell. And I was like, yeah. He said, yeah, you're onto something with that. And he was telling me about listening to he started listening to a different radio station that was more uplifting. And I said, yeah, that's what happens when you watch your news station all day long and you're getting angry about what's happening in the news. And then whenever I come home from school, you're angry about this, you're angry about that. And I'm like, try something different, read your book, go for a walk, get on your bike. And so I was thinking about also, before I turn it back over to Aaron, I was also thinking about coworkers who may be filling themselves with both of these ideas. So maybe they are participating in these conversations, whining, complaining conversations in the teacher's lounge, or, those reading the comments on Facebook or whatever. And if you're filling with both, so I have a friend that fills herself with both. She's very active in her church. She's a reader. She loves to read everything. She's also, so anyway, she's very unpredictable right now because she's filling both ways. And so I guess the lesson there is pick one. And of course, which direction I would lean in. So I don't know how you all feel about that, but that really has resonated with me over the past few months. And like I said, if you're going to hear me, if you've heard me speak, or you're going to hear me speak anytime soon, I will continue to talk about filling, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. I absolutely agree, and I think that's such a big part of what our teachers need to be taking in right now. So the next silver lining we're going to talk about is having strong systems. So from our perspective, something that we really talk about is that clear is kind, and unclear is unkind. So having those clear expectations for your students. If you're in a school that's implementing PBIS and you've worked with us on that, or if you're in a school that is not, I guarantee that this year you have had to create clear expectations for your students, because you've had different regulations in place because of COVID. And what we're seeing because of this is that there's been a downtrend in the negative behaviors that schools are typically seeing. And part of that can be attributed to the fact that not all students were there every day. But a lot of that we're seeing is coming from the fact that schools were very specific about what they needed students to do to be successful. And those clear expectations have really guided those positive behaviors for students, because there's no guesswork in what they need to do when they're in the hallway. There's no guesswork in how they need to get in line to go to lunch. And there's no guesswork in, how they need to move around the classroom right now, because we've had to do that for their safety. So if I could pick any silver lining to carry into next year, I think that would definitely be at the top of my list. Because when we're clear with students and what we expect from them and what we need from them, then they're way more likely to show us those behaviors and exhibit those things that we need from them. Another thing is that regular reinforcement. So when we see them doing the things that we need, when they're exhibiting positive behaviors and we're reinforcing that, it closes the loop for them. It takes away, like I said, that guesswork of what I need to do. If they're doing the right thing and we're acknowledging them for doing the right thing, then they know that was the right thing to do, and they're more likely to continue doing it over and over again. And both of those things lead into your routine and procedures, which as teachers, that is something that you're used to typically setting up in your classroom. But again, I can make a bet that you've been a little more specific in those this year out of need. And again, if that was something I could carry into next year, for any of you, it would be continuing to be really specific in those routines and procedures, because you've probably seen that the more specific you are in that, the more likely your students are to follow that. When I was in the classroom, I taught second grade, so my students were on the younger side. So that was something that was really ingrained in our routine anyway. And what we would see is that, as students get older, a lot of us tend to think that, they remember those routines, they remember those expectations. But at the end of the day, no matter what age our students are, whether they're in pre-K, fifth grade, seventh grade, 12th grade, they still need to have those clear expectations, that reinforcement, and those really specific routines. And with that goes your purposeful instruction. I know planning has been much different for educators this year than it ever was before. And I know the work that goes into that during a typical school year. So when you're planning for both in person and virtual, I know you've got that weight on you. But what I've seen from a lot of educators through my experiences with a student at home, talking to teachers that I know and working with schools across the state is that educators have really risen to this challenge and really made learning really streamlined and purposeful for their students. And it's been a really positive experience that could have been really negative. And then the last of these is digging into your data. And again, looking at we do this with academics frequently, but really how we're doing that, digging into our students' behavioral needs, their social emotional needs, students who were able to be online versus students who were not, students who were engaged in learning and students who we couldn't reach out to, and really using that data to find the needs of our students and reach out to those that were needing extra support is something I commend educators and teachers for doing this year because I've seen that come to fruition more than anything. And I hope to see that continue because I know that everyone has the students that they've worried about because their needs have been so great this year. So really getting to know them and digging into what's working for them has really been an exceptional thing this year. So I'm going to let Erin talk about her views on having strong systems in the classroom through her experiences with her fifth graders.
So upon reentry, I think it might have been the first reentry or zero 0.5. I don't know. I don't know how many reentries, but in September, I was listening to a podcast, and I'm not a podcast person, but I was listening to a podcast, Angela Watson's 40-hour teacher work week. If you check her out, she's amazing. And we were all wondering, all the teachers in the school wondering, how are we going to do this? Like, we just don't even know. This is so out of our comfort zone. We don't even know where to start. And she said something that was just, unforgettable. She basically just said to us, treat everything as if it was virtual. And so that gave us a starting point. It was profound for me because I didn't know, am I teaching lesson 1 on Monday and Tuesday? Am I teaching lesson 1 on Monday and whoever's home's doing lesson 1? So anyway, the Angela Watson podcast just sort of gave me permission to focus on everything like it was virtual. So then an organization, when Erin was talking about organization, that's my love language, I love color coding and I love to, I'm a planner. I love having everything organized. I do have the one closet that nobody needs to look in. I think we all have that. So yeah, I have that one area we don't want anybody to see. But what we had to do is just kind of strip down our standards into not the bare bones, but for lack of a better word, the bare bones. It was not a time to be super creative, super, frilly, all the fluff. And just really, what is it? And so that is a silver lining. What is it that my fifth graders specifically need to know for middle school? That's what I have to teach them. And so we started there, and we just kept it really consistent. And I know you've probably seen tons of, remote learning, what works. And I know that this podcast is not for that, but the consistency of it and keeping things very simple and structured. I think that teachers actually really appreciated that. We may say we don't want anybody to tell us what to do, but we do need clear, concise, especially during a pandemic, we needed clear, concise instructions. And I said this to maybe to you, Erin, or to Alicia the other day. I said, we're all somewhere in between. I'm doing my best and I can do better. And so it seems like it's very broad, but it's not, because there's so much that we wanted to do. And yet we're doing everything. We're making all the parent phone calls, we've got the works in your, in your online management system. Somehow it's there. We've got the grades coming in. And then there's something else like, oh, but what about this? And you're like, oh, okay, I was doing my best, but apparently I can do better. There's another piece to this. So yeah, I would say definitely check out Angela Watson's 40-hour teacher work week. I'm not paid by her, promoted by her. I just think she's got it figured out. I believe I will keep from this, from the consistency routine part, just the, maybe even planning everything like it's virtual, because I don't think that's ever going to go away. With snow days, who knows? Kids who are not in school for whatever reason, absences or whatever. I really kind of liked that shift of thinking. Call me crazy, but I kind of like that part.
Yeah, I think all of that really rings true with what's been going on this year, and I think all of that kind of helps lead into the idea that we've had these strengthened relationships. So as Erin was saying, you know, really just knowing what her students need is the first step in that. And I know that what we know is that relationships matter more than a lot of things. So from our perspective, we have seen a huge a huge increase in strength in relationships. Teachers are great at connecting with their students. That's something that I think comes innately to a lot of educators. But we've really seen relationships become strengthened between staff members and students. So, staff members among themselves and then students among themselves, because you're sharing similar experiences. So, all of teachers in a building are going through this same pandemic together, which I'm going to talk about in a little more detail here on another topic. But our students are going through the same thing too. So their relationships with one another are becoming stronger because they're sharing similar experiences. But we've also seen these relationships strengthen with our students and with our families. And like I mentioned before, you've really had to understand what's going on in your students' lives. So you're really building relationships with them because you weren't with them in person as much as you were used to seeing them. And that was, I know, a concern for a lot of people at the beginning of this. How are we going to get to know our students when they're not with us? But what we're seeing is that really you know them even better than ever before because you've been forced to form strong relationships with them in a new way. And I know that relationships with families have really increased. I'm guilty of when I was in the classroom thinking that I had good relationships with families because I used Class Dojo and sent out messages regularly and I had a weekly newsletter and my parents knew what was happening. But the reality of that and what I've seen the difference in for teachers this year is that the parents weren't an active participant in that. Yeah, they knew what I was doing in the classroom, but they weren't the ones doing it with their kids. So I told them what we were doing, and then I went along on my way and I did my thing and I sent them home, and that was it. And I wish I had those experiences this year that you guys have had to really have parents be participants in what's happening. So it's not just telling them what they're doing. It's, I know that you're getting texts and messages and emails in the evening time, and that you guys are going above and beyond your workday to really reach out to and help families while they're teaching their students and helping them learn from home. And I think that's just such a silver lining to take away is that now you know your students and you know your families in a way that you never have known them before. Um, and what that all comes down to for me is that idea of every student having one caring adult. And I know Clayton Birch talks about that a lot, making sure that our students have one caring adult. And for a lot of your kiddos, you are that person that they go to and that they know cares about them. So I'm going to let Erin talk about this because I know she has some really great experiences with this as well from her perspective.
So I think teachers in general, sort of in a normal year, especially at the beginning of the year, they kind of go in their rooms and shut the door and they decorate and they plan and they're cutting and pasting and laminating and making labels. And it's sort of like, there's time for us to chat, and, we'd go to lunch with each other on those prep days. But this year there was just something different. It just felt different. Obviously it felt different. It was a different kind of year, but teachers were kind of, crawling out of their rooms and seeking. I think we needed interaction with other people because we'd been home for so long. But we also, we needed help from each other. So at least in my building, everybody had something that they could bring to the table, some strength, whether it was Teams call, Teams, learning Teams, or Zoom, or, the document camera, or the new way to share information, sharing your screen. And then the list goes on about all the different technology pieces that we threw at kids. But every adult in the building had a strength that we needed. And we were practicing with each other because nobody could picture how this was gonna look. Anyway, what that did for us was that it brought us closer, not just to the teacher across the hall, but the teacher way down the hall. Everybody needed each other. We also got, we were in several meetings together. At my school, we pray together. We also have a Bible study together, which has brought us closer and definitely strengthened our relationships. But I also found that staff was just going in and checking on each other. Maybe they didn't need anything. Maybe they didn't need help with Schoology or whatever, Zern or whatever. They just wanted to go in and check on somebody and say, how are you doing? Are you okay? Like, how's your family? So back to the relationships between staff members, gosh, I work in the same building with the same, 30 adults, and have been there for 7 years and only seen and really gotten to know 3 or 4 of them. And I'm a people person. I, do my rounds in the morning, say hello to everybody, but I didn't really feel like I knew them. And I do now. And everyone, I hang out with the cooks in the morning because I get to school super early. And so they're usually the only people there. And so I, sort of branched out. We have, you have the people that you can eat lunch with. So we have our 4th and 5th grade team is generally together. But as we were waiting for our students to return, or if it was remote days, we were spending time with the other teachers in the building. And like I said, everybody just has so much to offer and just different perspective. And as teacher of the year, I felt it was my duty to sort of, kind of steer conversations in positive ways. And so, whether I'm sure I would have taken that role regardless of the crown that I'm wearing this year, but it was just really good. I think teachers just needed to feel like they were heard. And I don't mean on social media, but just with the people who were in the trenches with them. Erin, do you want me to wait and talk about the parent-family relationships?
Sure, that's going to be my next topic.
Okay,
I'll go ahead then.
All right then.
All right. I think all of these strengthened relationships really lead into the idea of family engagement from this year. As I said in the last topic, we know that relationships matter. And from our perspective here at the Technical Assistance Center, we've really taken on a mindset shift of the idea of family involvement and shifting that into family engagement. And I said I was going to talk about this in a little more detail. The idea of all of us being in the same situations. If you look at the little picture there on your screen, you're going to see the big storm in the back swirling, and there's a cruise ship, and then there's a rowboat. So something that we have really started to talk about is the idea that we are all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. So we're experiencing something happening around us, but we're not all coming from the same situations to handle that. And we've really taken on that mindset when we talked about family engagement. So I said, you've really strengthened these relationships with your families because you've gotten to know them and you've gotten to know their unique, specific situations. And this isn't to say that you're looking for students coming from a bad situation versus a positive one, but really just understanding what goes on at home. An example of that is, their work schedule has played such a huge part into the last year. I'm blessed to have been working from home during the pandemic. So our 9-year-old was here with me during the day. That had its perks and its downfalls. But so does the situation for the parent who's working outside of the home. As teachers, you were going into your school buildings and you were used to your students being in school as well, but now you needed to find childcare for them, and you were most likely doing their schoolwork with them in the evenings. So you really understood that perspective of the parents who worked outside of the home and their evening time was taking up with schoolwork. Families working night shifts, so during the day they were sleeping. So what could have been considered, kind of some neglectful behavior, I guess you could say, as well, they're asleep during. Are you allowing them to watch afterwards, and what resources are you sending their way so that they're engaged with their students, when they're not able to be with you? And that's a topic I could talk about all day long, and I promise I will not. But this is just something that um, we've wanted to talk about for a long time, but I think this year in particular has kind of forced that topic into the spotlight of, how are we engaging families in a way that's more meaningful than what we've been doing in the past, so that we get, more outcomes from that, and really more intention behind what we're doing. So those ideas there you can see on the screen. How are schools supporting families so that families are supporting students, so that you have really true collaboration going on? And I know Erin has some to add to this, so I'm going to go ahead and let her talk about her experiences.
I really think that the parent relationship has had a clear progression from September to now. With September being what we always have done until to now, which is a complete 180. I have always prided myself in relationships with my kids first and my families second, because I live and work in my district where I teach. And so the parents of my students and the families, I mean, I live beside them. I mean, they're at soccer games sitting beside me. I've had 2 and 3 and sometimes 7 kids from the same family. I felt like going into this year, I knew my families fairly well. And I didn't, I just thought, I don't know. I didn't know how much more I could do. I didn't know how much better I could do that, do the family engagement piece. And wow. I mean, I thought I couldn't grow anymore in that area. And I really, really feel like I have. Just like what Erin was talking about with the cultural considerations, and just, knowing who you can, how to send the communication. I mean, it was pretty steep learning curve at the front. We also rolled out one-to-one iPads right in the midst of all of this. And so, the tech team was sparse, overworked, and underappreciated. And then, so we were second in line for all the tech issues also. So there were, and you all know that technology can make everybody crazy. Even the calmest, nicest, most positive person can go crazy if something's not working correctly. And then you add, if they're a parent and they were trying to get their child on something and it doesn't work, it's just anxiety was just heightened. But I stopped and I just kind of said to myself, what if our first reaction when a parent reaches out to us about whatever, what if our first reaction was not to be offended? What if our first reaction was to listen? You always hear about listening to respond versus listening to understand. And when you do that, when you make that shift, when you're actually listening to understand what's happening, I want to help my student, I want to help my child with this. I can't. Okay. What are you trying? When you're listening to understand them rather than the response. Oh, here's the tech team number. or I don't know the answer to your question, but I'll find out. When you really listen, take the time to listen, it can be very, very, very beneficial. I learned that I had to right away. I was sending text messages because we hadn't just my experience, because we had settled on Schoology, but it wasn't ready yet. And so we were like, are we going to use Google Classroom? Are we going to use Schoology? What are we going to do? And I was just like, I'm just going to give you my cell phone number because I know that that's going to work. And that was a bold move on my part, but I just right away sent a message that said, this is for our communication. Feel free when appropriate to message me if you have an issue. And everybody has been very kind about it. But I do have a story, because I do have that one parent who did not see any boundaries. And, but she taught me a lot. She's the parent, and I know you all have met a parent like this, who, if there's something misspelled in a PowerPoint, if there's something not linked correctly, if there's not a place to submit work, I mean, she was the one that was going to let me know at the time. And what I quickly found out was that she had just a small chunk of time where she was working from home. Also, she had a small chunk of time where she was teaching her daughter the lessons and getting everything, all the work completed. She's teaching her, she's, work completion, submitting work and that sort of thing. They had this small chunk of time in the day, which I loved that they had a schedule. So when I learned that, I felt a little bit better about that. But she was blowing up my phone. Even when we had initially back in September, October, we had some in-person instruction for a little bit, and blowing up my phone during the school day. And I thought, I can't get to her. So what I did was I just sort of considered her like my co-teacher, and I would send things to her and just say, can you take a look at this? Make sure this is okay. Is this going to work for you and your child? And so to kind of spin it, you've heard the kill 'em with kindness. Well, it's like, just use her. She's already going to be, your proofreader. Just use her. And I remember my daughter and I know I told this story to Aaron and Alicia a few weeks ago. My daughter and I were heading to Fairmont to pick up the cats. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother webinar. And I'm getting these messages from this parent, and I'm like, oh, it's coming through the phone. And my daughter's in the back, like, there she is, there she is, there she is. What's she want? And so I pull over to Sheets, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot to enable the test or enable whatever. So I do that. And I'm sending her a message, and my daughter's in the back, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have to get this right. And she's like, Mom, you don't have to do it right now. I'm like, I have to do it right now. And I said, I have to say this. And I was like, listen to this. And I read it to her, and it just, the way that the parent had written the message was just hateful and nasty. And I'm saying to myself, but my daughter can hear me. I'm saying to myself, I've been so kind to her. I've used her. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do what I can do right now. I'm going to send this message. And if she wants to continue to respond, I'm just going to have to wait. And so we're in the car, and it's all the messages are coming up, and I'm just hitting ignore. It's coming up on my watch. It's beeping on my phone. It's, a gazillion devices in the car. And my daughter's like, Mom, what you want now? And I'm like, we're going to wait till we get home. We got to go get the cats. And so Hayden's my daughter. She's over my shoulder watching me. And I'm just like, thank you so much. Just this. And my daughter stops and she says, Mom, why are you being so nice to her? I was like, what good's it gonna do me to treat her the same way that she's treated? She's trying to help her daughter. She's trying to do the best job for her daughter. And so I just decided I was just going to value the input of this mom who was trying to do a really great job with her daughter, and is doing a great job with her daughter. I mean, I looked at her as a mom who had a daughter. I mean, my daughter's teacher came to me like week 3 and was like, your daughter hasn't turned in any work. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the teacher of the year, but I'm not the mother of the year, but I got to get this work done. And so, I looked to this parent, and I think, man, she's really got it together. And yeah, her tone might've been off, but like I said before, what if being offended was not our first emotion, I guess, when we read texts or emails or messages from parents. And so, Erin, I don't remember. I know I told you another story there, and I didn't write it down. Is there another piece
I
to that?
I remember another story, but I don't remember it was. But no, I think that that's the perfect
Okay.
example. I'm sitting
Okay.
here thinking, man, this is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about that mindset shift and
Mhm.
really just understanding our parents and where they're coming from. And I think that that's the perfect example of that. It's
I think about in my house church group, there's a couple, and the husband will read a text message. So they both get the same text message from somebody, and the husband will read the message, and he's like, "Oh, that's fine. What? That's good." And the wife reads the message, and she's like, "Well, don't you see? Don't you hear? Don't you see what she's trying to say here, or whatever the message was?" And so you can have two completely different perspectives of messages, and that's basically what we had, because it's just quicker and it's easier. But yeah, if we just if maybe the parents' intentions are good, and so why don't we go there first?
Absolutely. I've said, when I was in the classroom that our approach to parents is what's really going to set the tone. And you're right. When you're reading a text or a message on an app, especially, it's really hard to read that. So our response to that is really what's going to kind of level that out. And I think you're exactly right in saying that, you know, you gotta just really take on the idea that you're gonna set the tone for that and the mood for that. So I think that's the perfect example.
I didn't say this, but I also think, I mean, I feel like I always have decent classroom community. I always feel like I know my students really well. And it's funny, even with in and out of school, and even with seeing them online, I really do feel like, and one of the teachers that I work with is going to say, "You say this every year, Erin," but I really do think that this class is a great class. They're the class for me, because they I don't know. I feel like I know them even better than the classes prior. And like I said, I have one of our second grade teachers like, "You say that every year," but it really is true. In a time where it's harder, we've had to just work harder. And then and the time that you've had, I don't know if we've had some small group, we had a group A, group B, so you get to know them. On Teams calls, they've gotten to know each other. And then now we're all together. It really does feel like community. I was worried that it wouldn't, but it still really does. Um, anyway, I know that I'm getting into the student piece. I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's because of the
Okay.
parents.
Mhm.
Without their support, we would not have even, fifth grader, even younger. They have to have help getting on initially, so they have to have some kind of support to um, even to be able to connect with them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the silver lining to really take away is that, as I said, you always thought of parents as, partners, but were we really making them partners? And I think that's really going to be a silver lining to carry forward into next year for everybody. So as Erin said, she's kind of getting to the next topic, and I'm really excited to hear her side of this because I know what she has planned. So I'm going to work through my piece really quickly so she can talk about what she wants to say. But the last silver lining I want to talk about is outcomes, and I know the outcomes are what drive, our decision making, not only in education but in what we do here at the TA Center as well. And so some of these outcomes that we have seen from the work that we're doing with schools around West Virginia is this new focus on, not a new, but a stronger focus on mental health and social emotional learning. And I know those are topics that have been around. That's why our center was created, for support in mental health and behavior needs. But really wanting to make sure that our kids are okay while they're experiencing a crisis has been something that's been at the forefront of teachers' minds, and something that we have worked with schools to make sure that not only are you in tune with what's happening with your kids and your families, but what resources do you have available. And schools have really, really stepped up to the plate in this department. And, they have counselors and specialists reaching out to families and checking in with students on a regular basis. And I think, if I could take any silver lining, it would be again, that this is something that's really strengthened this year in a time of great need. As I've said several times, and Aaron has also talked about, this new insight into student and family needs has really created outcomes that have let our students be really successful this year. We've seen, as I mentioned, an increase in positive behaviors, which is really the end goal for the work that we do here. And this fidelity to behavior frameworks, an example of that is PBIS, which is, where we're coming to you from, but a lot of schools have different frameworks in place. Um, and when I talked about, the clear expectations and the routines and the procedures, so this really strong fidelity to that framework that you have in place is a really great outcome that, um, I said that clear expectations would be at the top of my list, but I think I have to move this one into that spot to really hold true to that fidelity to whatever framework you have in place. Or if your school is looking for one, then, finding something like PBIS to implement, to really make sure that those things stick when there isn't the need of safety hovering over us, but really just wanting to find those routines and these outcomes for our kids every year as we move forward. So I know Erin is going to talk to us about outcomes because she talked to her fifth graders and kind of got their perspective on things. And that's all I know. So I'm really excited to hear what they had to say about school this year during a pandemic. So, Erin, go ahead.
I'm going to make you wait for that piece a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I do have a list of things, and that I do want to make sure that I share. I haven't really I've been looking down, but not at the correct list that I wanted to make sure I hit on. So, when Aaron and I were talking about this, I sort of set this up as the silver linings for everyone, the silver linings for teachers, students, parents. And I got to the student part and I thought, I'm going to write all these things down. I'm going to write down, they have ownership of their education now. That's a silver lining. They have to have ownership of their education. I do believe that. I don't think that they know that, but I do believe that they have some ownership of it now. They've become resilient because they've had to, because, they've been going to school during a pandemic. They've had to, one of the silver linings is time management. I know that's one at our house. If you want to do the A, B, and C, you have to do your schoolwork first. Also, time management for some kids looks very different. Work for 10 minutes and play for an hour, or whatever carrot you have to dangle in front of your children and students. I think our students have an appreciation for school like they've never had. And I love that. I love school pride. And we're seeing that more at Tennerton right now. They have appreciation for their teachers. They've missed their teachers. They've missed their friends, and just time with their peers. But one of the silver linings for me as a fifth grade teacher for students is because of the connections, I can also share with them the sense of immediacy and urgency, because I can say, you're going to middle school in 10 weeks. Like in 10 weeks, you're going to be a sixth grader. And so we need to make sure we hit all these things. And so having those conversations with my kids about urgency and immediacy, some kids have two speeds, slow and come get me. I mean, my daughter is one of them. I'm like, hey, no, you ready for school? And she's like in her pajamas, and I woke her up 35 minutes ago. It's like, we've got to have this sense of let's get it done right now. And I don't mean to rush them through things, but just time on task, I guess. And that's one of the things that I found was lacking. But I feel like we can turn that challenge into an opportunity to teach them about time management and sticking to some kind of schedule or plan. So I said to my kids a few weeks ago, I said, so after the pandemic's over, what do you want to keep? What are some things that you want to keep? I mean, I know I said to them right away, I want to keep the masks because sometimes, especially in the spring, y'all smell bad. And so if I keep the mask on, and if you teach fourth or fifth grade or even sixth grade in the spring, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They come in from the playground. It's like, whoa, catch a whiff of something. But if you have your mask on, you don't smell any of that. So I'm keeping that. But they said they really liked having lunch in the classroom. And so I'm going to keep it. I may not keep it every day, but I'm going to keep it because it's been a community piece that they really like. And we started watching. I don't know if binge watching, but they wanted to watch this series on Amazon Prime called Just Add Magic. And so they are really looking forward to, whatever day of the week Mrs. Anderson says is lunch in the classroom now, to finish watching Just Add Magic. There's a bunch of seasons. It's really good. They said, we got to have recess on the baseball fields. So we have a really unique situation. The Upshur County Youth Baseball complex is right outside our school, and we've never really used it because we have a playground and we have a nice blacktop area, but we have 4 classes having recess at the same time. And so we had a class on the playground, a class on the blacktop, and then a class on either on a baseball field. And so they really, really like that. Our principal bought some new equipment for them. And they really liked it. Even though they had to clean the equipment before they put it back in the basket, they didn't care. They were like, we're going to baseball fields. They want to keep the 2:00 dismissal. And I told them I put in a good word for them, but don't hold your breath. And they also were appreciative of being eased back into their normal routine. I thought that was very mature of a 5th grader to say. They eased us back in. So we were small group, and then we were, still at 2:00 with everybody. And now we're 4 days a week till 3:15. Some other things, and you'll be able to tell, some of them did not understand what I was saying. Somebody said, it's almost over and we're going back to school. Some of them said we were able to stay connected to our friends and they liked their Teams meetings. And so I do think Teams is never going to go away. I think that it's going to be something, like I said earlier, for students who happen to be out for whatever reason, if, maybe for something medical that, or I don't know, sick day, snow day, whatever. They said, I have one student, she is all about the numbers. She's like, the cases have gone down. And every day she was like giving us an update, the cases have gone down. And so what she's trying to tell us is that what we're doing is working. And so I think she felt like she was part of this puzzle of slowing the spread. And I think she felt really good about that. Several students really liked the family time. You could probably guess some did not like the family time. They didn't mention that because I told them they had to stay positive. They couldn't tell me anything negative, but you could tell who was speaking and who wasn't speaking. And then I had a student, bless his heart. He said, we learned that life isn't going to be perfect, that we're going to have ups and downs. Oh, bless your heart. And so out of the mouth of a 10-year-old, I think he's 11 now, we have ups and downs. And it just goes back to that resiliency for our kids. And so anyway, they are currently very mad at me because I've been out of the classroom. I was out Friday, Monday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and now today we don't see them. So I'll see them tomorrow for a half a day. But yeah, they were excited to help me, and I don't think they completely understand what silver linings mean, but they knew when I said, what things do you want to keep? I think more than would admit to it, like like what Aaron was speaking of right at the beginning, the clear and concise standards for, where we are in the hallway. And that helps. We do PAX at Tennerton. We have the PAX Good Behavior game. And so we've tried to stay really consistent with that, even through the pandemic, so that when they are back full time, that it's still in place. But I think that they did like all the different, they knew I liked knowing when they were going to the bathroom, because I could say, oh, well, we don't have bathroom break for another 20 minutes. So just hang in there. And most of them can hang in there with you until their bathroom time. And I know that's something simple, but yeah, there's so much that we can hold on to. And that's really where what we need to cling to right now, is all the good and all the positive, the messages and the positive outcomes that we can kind of hold on to for years to come.
I think out of the mouths of babes, I think there's no better way to really talk about outcomes than to see the things that they've experienced this year that they want to see continue. And it's no surprise to me that all of those all of those connect with the things that we've been saying. So when Erin and I were talking about this webinar and the things that we wanted to make sure that we covered, she said, I want to talk about some things that we've always done that haven't changed at all. And I think that's a great place for us, a great topic for us to end on. So I'm going to let her talk about this, and then I'm going to kind of wrap things up with a few more slides, and then we should have a little bit of time to answer any questions that anyone has. So Erin, I'll go ahead and let you chime in on this.
Okay. So whenever I started sort of my spreadsheet, my chart of what are the silver linings, I kept going back to connections. And I thought, gosh, we still have connections. They're just different kinds of connections, parents, family, students. But they're still there. The connections that you have with your kids, knowing their pets' names, knowing, what sport they play and when their games are, that sort of stuff is still there. We've just had to maybe take some extra time to figure that out. We still have classroom community. And we're just, again, making an extra effort to make it happen. We did all sorts of, I know this is not about remote learning, but there's so many things that you can do to keep that community, even on a Teams call or a Zoom call. We still are talking relationships and the culture over content. You've heard it. It's maybe overdone, but kids are not going to remember everything you've taught them, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And so those relationships. And if you have a good relationship with them, obviously you can teach them just about anything. There's so many quotes here, teachers who love teaching have kids who love learning. There's, the quote that kids who come to school, what's the quote, Erin? You might have to help me with this one. The kids who are loved at home come to school to learn, and the kids who aren't come to school for love. I think it goes kind of like that. And so none of that has changed. None of that has changed. And the last thing I have is that we are still rooting for our kids. We've been rooting. We're always rooting for them. We're always their cheerleader. I say the greatest part about teaching fifth grade is they leave and they never come back. And the worst part about teaching fifth grade is that they leave and they never come back, because they are yours. Once they're on my class list, they're forever mine. And we're rooting for them. So that has not changed. That heart for teaching, that teacher identity, which it's the kids that gives us that identity, that has not changed. It's still there. And whether I don't know if there are administrators on the call, whether you're in administration, whether you're a teacher, whether you're service personnel, brand new to teaching, those things, the connections, the community, relationships over content, and rooting for your kids, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen those strengthen this year, and they will continue far into the future. So one thing I just wanted to mention quickly, during our last webinar, one of my coworkers, Terrell, and I did a webinar last month on our top 5 suggestions for a successful transition back to school as you were transitioning again into going full time. And these are the top 5 things we had. And I think we talked about all of these today, was that it's all about relationships, that your engagement equals outcomes, your expectations and routines are important, having regular reinforcement for what your students are doing, and then consistency is key. And, we are what we repeatedly do. And I think that's important with the message that we're sharing with you today. So, the consistency over a school year is important, but if Erin's 5th graders can find things that they say, I want this to continue, then my challenge for you is to challenge yourself to find those things in your classroom or in your school or in your experiences this year. As her 5th graders could name things that they would want to continue. What are things from this year that you want to make sure that you continue doing for the rest of this year and then into the years to come? I think that's an important thing to remember, that, while there's been a lot of negativity around what's happened this year, because it's been stressful and it's been chaotic and there's been a lot that's unknown. And I know as a teacher, those feelings aren't welcome to what you do. As Aaron said, you guys we operate on consistency and on having a routine and being organized. So it's been a challenge to not have that throughout the school year. So despite of all those things, what are the positive things that have happened that you say, I really want this to carry forward with me? And of course, huge special thanks to Aaron for being with us today. I had a vision for this webinar a long time ago. I've been talking for months about wanting to do something in March to kind of say, all right, it's been a year since, the school shut down. I know that we've learned a lot in that year. How can we highlight that? And when I heard her on the radio, I immediately called Alicia and said, I need to reach out to her because I think she's going to fit perfectly into this. And she is not disappointed at all. So I hope you have taken what she said to heart and really let it guide your thinking. Here's my information if you need to reach out to me for any reason. As Alicia said, I am the behavior support specialist in the North. But if you have any questions about what we talked about today, feel free to reach out to me and I can guide you in the right direction. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. And if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself and we'd be happy to answer those in the little bit of time that we have left.
While we're waiting, Aaron, we didn't talk about this, but I was at the State Department this week, at the beginning of this week, and I just decided I would poll them also for their silver linings about what they saw at their level. And it's much the same thing of what teachers would say, just basically like that remote work can work. Trusting their employees. They were talking about that. And I've kept translating and just transferring it to my kids too. And then one of the things that I was talking about with one of them was productivity versus just sitting there clocking hours. And I think, wow, that is a silver lining, thinking about productivity versus just putting your time in every day. And so anyway, I just thought I would share that because I had questioned a couple people.
Yeah, thank you, Erin.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I can tell you from our perspective, the foundation of our work is really PBIS. And I can tell you, I can't tell you how much I enjoy the fact that we've watched PBIS be able to pivot to remote learning, to virtual, to support schools in hybrid models, to support teachers and kids. And so there's something about when you dedicate your career to a framework and it's research based, but you watch it be able to really support schools. I've said that for about 6 months that it's a silver lining. And I'll tell you 6 months ago, it didn't feel appropriate to say that there was a silver lining. So I'm glad we're at the place that we can have that conversation. We have a couple thank yous, but I don't see any questions. You all were wonderful. Aaron Anderson, thank you so much for joining us. This is recorded. There was a little glitch on my computer, so there might be a small break in the recordings, but it will be sent out hopefully by the end of the week. So if you were registered, that will be coming to you in an email and potentially with the PowerPoint slides as well, so you can see the points that Aaron Day has made. We do have a comment. Tina says, very good and informational. I'm a social worker and work as a ties liaison with Critterton Services, and she works at Elm Grove Elementary School, and she works with children who have come from much trauma. As I have observed working with children, they have struggled with lack of engagement. They are really wanting the attention and love.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I was just in a conversation earlier this week. I don't know if you all have heard of Principal Wayman, but she has wrote a book called Lead Fearlessly, Love Hard. And I feel like that's where we're at. We have to lead for our students and for our parents and for our fellow staff members, but we have to love our kids harder than we've ever loved them before right now. And I know you guys have dedicated an hour of your evening to joining us. So I know that you are dedicated to that as well. So thank you for being here. Everybody have a happy St. Patrick's Day. We'll let you know about our next webinar and we appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.